Welcome back to Sovereign Judgment, where suburban authority meets the terrible consequences of putting its demands in writing. Today's story begins with one porch light, one HOA president, and a lighting solution technically capable of guiding a cargo ship through a hurricane. Before we switch it on, tell me where you're watching from. I'm curious how far the glow reached. Let's illuminate the situation. At 9:43 on a Tuesday morning, I opened my front door and found a cream-colored envelope resting on the welcome mat, with the solemn dignity of a court summons delivered by a wedding planner. The envelope was thick, embossed, and scented faintly of lavender toner. Across the front, in raised navy lettering, were the words, Briar Glen Estates Community Standards Committee. Underneath that, someone had added confidential in red ink, as though the envelope contained nuclear launch codes instead of another complaint about a recycling bin. I picked it up while wearing pizza print socks and holding a mug of coffee that had already gone cold. Cold coffee is a recurring feature of my life. Some men collect watches. Some restore classic cars. I repeatedly forget beverages until they reach the temperature of tap water in February. Inside the envelope was a single sheet of paper. Dear Mr. Daniel Mercer, it began, in a font that looked like Times New Roman had received military training. This correspondence constitutes formal notice that the exterior illumination fixture, located adjacent to your primary entrance, produces excessive luminance, inconsistent with the peaceful residential character of Briar Glen Estates. I looked over my shoulder at the fixture in question. It was a porch light, not a searchlight, not a stadium flood lamp, not the beam they use to summon masked billionaires onto rooftops. A porch light. It had one 800-lumen LED bulb behind frosted glass and had been installed sometime during the administration of a president whose name I could not remember. The brass frame was slightly crooked, one decorative screw had rusted, and a moth named Gerald had been living inside it since April. The letter continued. Pursuant to Residential Harmony Standard 8.4, paragraph C, all exterior illumination must be subdued, tasteful, and non-intrusive. Your fixture has been observed emitting light beyond the boundaries of your property. I read that sentence twice. Light beyond the boundaries of my property. Apparently my photons had failed to respect the survey markers. The notice demanded that I replace the bulb within 72 hours, or face a fine of £75 per day. At the bottom, in blue ink, was the looping signature of Patricia Wexler, HOA president. Patricia's signature looked like a cardiogram recorded during a tax audit. I stepped onto the porch and looked across the street at her house. Her curtains moved. Not much. Just enough to confirm that Patricia was conducting surveillance from behind what appeared to be 17 meters of beige lace. I raised my cold coffee in greeting. The curtains snapped shut like a clam discovering debt. The house mattered to me more than I liked admitting. I had bought 14 Lanternberry Lane 4 years earlier, after spending most of my 30s moving between rentals with walls the thickness of sandwich meat. The house was small, square, and painted a shade the estate agent had called heritage cream, which was marketing language for mayonnaise in weak sunlight. But it was mine. My late father, Robert Mercer, had helped me rebuild the front steps during the last summer before his health failed. He had measured everything twice, cut one board 3 times, and blamed the timber with the confidence of a man who had never lost an argument to an inanimate object. The porch light had been his final addition. You always leave a light on, he had told me. Tightening the crooked brass fixture means people know they're welcome. So yes, it was an old porch light. It was also the last thing my father had installed with his own hands. During working hours, I designed commercial electrical systems for warehouses, ferry terminals, and municipal facilities. That detail did not seem important when I first read Patricia's letter. It became important approximately 11 minutes later. At 9:54, a golf cart rolled into my driveway. It was white with burgundy seats, chrome hubcaps, and an amber warning beacon on top. The words Briar Glen Compliance Patrol had been applied to the side in vinyl lettering, large enough to suggest the vehicle was authorized to pursue fugitives across international borders. Patricia Wexler sat behind the wheel. She wore a pink floral tracksuit that looked like a botanical garden had exploded inside a sofa showroom. Her blonde hair had been sculpted into a helmet so immovable it could probably have qualified as protective equipment. A pearl necklace hung around her neck, despite it being before 10 in the morning, and despite the fact that she was driving a glorified lawnmower. On the passenger seat rested a brown clipboard. Of course there was a clipboard. Patricia climbed out with the rigid posture of a 4-star general arriving to inspect troops who had failed to alphabetize the ammunition. "Mr. Mercer," she said. Her voice had the bright metallic quality of a teaspoon trapped in a garbage disposal. "Patricia." President Wexler. "In matters of official association business." "Patricia, then." Her smile tightened like a zip tie around a garden hose. "I assume you received the notice." "I did." And the envelope was very impressive. "I'm referring to your corrective plan. I don't have one yet." She clicked a pen and held it over the clipboard, as though my answer might need to be entered into evidence at The Hague. "The board has determined that your porch illumination constitutes a nuisance." "Which board members measured it?" "The board does not need to perform measurements when the nuisance is visually self-evident." "So nobody measured it." "The fixture is plainly excessive. It's an 8-watt bulb." She blinked. Patricia had prepared herself for defiance, outrage, perhaps a dramatic monologue about freedom. She had not prepared for wattage. She recovered quickly. Residential Harmony Standard 8.4, paragraph C, grants the board discretion to assess intrusive exterior lighting. What does intrusive mean? It means intrusive. That cleared it right up. Her pen stopped above the clipboard. I pointed toward her house. "Your garage lights are brighter than mine. My garage lights are approved architectural sconces. They're 6 bulbs aimed directly at the street. They enhance the character of the community. My porch light illuminates 2 steps and Gerald." "Who is Gerald?" "The moth." Patricia looked at the fixture, then back at me, as if concerned I might have appointed an insect to the architectural committee. "This isn't a debate," she said. "You have 72 hours. Can I see the complaint? Complaints are confidential. Can I see the light standard? It's in the governing documents." I checked. There's no maximum brightness, color temperature, mounting height, beam angle, or measured light trespass limit. Her face shifted by 0.5 millimeter. That was the moment I knew she had not expected me to read the documents. Patricia straightened her pearl necklace and lifted her chin like a swan preparing to demand a manager. "The board retains broad interpretive authority." "How broad?" "As broad as necessary to preserve harmony." "That sounds measurable." She made a mark on her clipboard. "What did you just write?" "Uncooperative." "Is that a lighting classification?" "It can affect enforcement." There it was. Not a rule, not a standard, not even a genuine concern. A loyalty test with a light bulb attached. I smiled, because I was worried. And smiling was cheaper than hiring a therapist on short notice. "I'll review my options." "You'll replace the bulb." "I'll review my options." Her expression hardened like custard left in a freezer. "If the violation remains after Friday at noon, the daily fine begins automatically." "Friday at noon." "Yes, good to know." Patricia turned, marched back to the golf cart, and drove away at 11 miles per hour, with the self-importance of a motorcade escorting a minor royal to a garden center. That evening, I stood on the pavement with a borrowed light meter. At the edge of my property, my porch light registered 0.18 lux. For perspective, a full moon on a clear night can produce roughly that amount. Patricia was being harassed by the moon. I took photographs, recorded the time, documented the weather, and saved everything in a folder titled Porch Light Nonsense. At 8:12 the next morning, I received an email from the HOA. "Urgent lighting update." Patricia had attached 3 photographs of my house taken from across the street. In each one, the porch light appeared as a glowing white orb because she had photographed it using a phone camera with enough exposure compensation to make a candle look like the birth of a star. One image included her own thumb. The thumb was better lit than my porch. At 10:30, the HOA's private Facebook group received a post from Patricia. Several residents have expressed concern about increasingly aggressive exterior lighting practices. Increasingly aggressive. My bulb had apparently joined a gang. The post continued, "Such lighting can disrupt sleep, reduce property values, and attract undesirable nighttime activity." The only undesirable nighttime activity on Lanternberry Lane was a raccoon that opened wheelie bins with the skill of a locksmith. I commented beneath the post. "Could the board publish the maximum allowable lux level?" Patricia deleted my comment within 6 minutes. At 1:15, she emailed me privately. Public challenges to board authority are not constructive. I replied, neither are invisible standards. At 1:22, she sent back, your tone has been noted. That sentence nearly made me lose my temper. Not because it was threatening, because it was so perfectly, professionally useless. It sat in my inbox like a laminated frown. I stood in my kitchen, gripping the counter, while my coffee cooled beside me with the patient inevitability of a glacier. Then I breathed, opened a spreadsheet, and began documenting everything. Dates, times, emails, photographs, bylaw references, deleted comments, light meter readings. My spreadsheet worked on the first try, which was either a miracle or a warning from the universe. On Thursday, I received a second certified letter. The violation had expanded. Now the HOA alleged that the porch fixture was commercial in appearance. It was brass, with a little decorative curl on top. If it had been any less commercial, it would have come with a bonnet and churned butter. At 7:40 that evening, Patricia arrived again. This time she parked the golf cart sideways across my driveway, blocking my car. The amber beacon rotated above her head, painting orange circles across the garage door like the world's least exciting nightclub. She wore khaki trousers ironed so sharply they could have sliced cheese. The clipboard was back. Mr. Mercer, she began, using a tone like an automated phone menu denying a refund. The board has reviewed your correspondence. You mean my question? Your correspondence. Was there an answer? The board is not obligated to provide technical specifications for every aesthetic judgment. Then how do residents know whether they comply? Reasonable people know. Am I reasonable? That remains under review. She flipped a page on the clipboard. Additionally, the Community Standards Committee has received information that you intentionally left the light operating during daylight hours yesterday. I forgot to turn it off. Intent is inferred from conduct. I was carrying groceries. The board cannot regulate based on excuses. It was 11 minutes. 11 documented minutes. Did you stand there timing it? Patricia paused. Her silence answered like a witness accidentally leaning into the microphone. She continued. Under Section 3.2, Paragraph F, the board may conduct visual inspections from common areas. The pavement is not a common area. It's city property. We maintain the grass strip. The city owns it. We edge it. That doesn't transfer sovereignty. Her mouth formed a tight circle, like she had bitten into a lemon that owed her money. Your sarcasm is exactly why stronger enforcement measures become necessary. What stronger measures? A compliance hearing, suspension of amenity access, additional administrative charges. We don't have amenities. We have the decorative pond. That pond is 3 feet wide and contains a plastic frog. Access can still be suspended. So I won't be allowed to look at it? She wrote something down. I leaned slightly to see. Are you writing mocked pond? She snapped the clipboard against her chest. You have until noon tomorrow. I remember. If the light remains unchanged, the fine starts at £75 per day. Understood. And if you replace it, the new fixture must be no brighter. I looked at her. That sentence mattered. No brighter than what? The existing fixture. Could you put that in writing? Her eyes narrowed. Why? So there's no confusion. The existing fixture is the maximum brightness the board will tolerate. Exactly the existing fixture? Or less? In terms of total emitted lumens? Patricia did not know what lumens were, but she knew surrender when she suspected it. Yes, she said carefully. The replacement may emit no more total light than the existing bulb, and it must be on only when needed. Correct. Ideally controlled by a timer. A timer? Yes. A properly scheduled timer. Could you email me that? She lifted the clipboard like a shield. I will have the association secretary issue a clarification. Perfect. Patricia drove away with the pleased expression of a person who had just signed a peace treaty without noticing the tanks behind her. At 8:06 that night, the clarification arrived. It read, the board requires replacement of the current porch fixture with an alternative that emits no more than 800 total lumens and operates only during limited evening hours through an automatic timing device. Patricia had copied the entire board. She had also copied the association's lawyer. I printed the email and placed it beside my cold coffee. Then I called Salvatore Moretti. Everyone called him Big Sal, partly because he was 6'4" and shaped like a drinks machine that had developed strong opinions about municipal permits. Sal owned Moretti Marine Signaling and Industrial Illumination, a company based in the fictional harbor district of Port Bellwether. He supplied warning beacons, aviation markers, emergency floodlights, lighthouse optics, and other equipment designed for situations where darkness was not merely inconvenient but legally actionable. I had worked with him on a ferry terminal project 3 years earlier. He answered the phone with a voice like gravel being poured into a whiskey barrel. "Daniel Mercer. Either you need a beacon or somebody has made a very poor electrical decision. Possibly both." I explained the situation. Sal was silent for several seconds. Then he laughed so loudly I had to move the phone away from my ear. "She complained your porch light is too bright?" "Yes. So she ordered you to replace it?" "Yes. With something no brighter than 800 lumens." "Correct. On a timer." Another pause. "Daniel," he said, suddenly serious, "I need you to understand that I have waited my entire professional life for this phone call. I thought you might. I had a condo board once tell me my work van was an industrial eyesore. I wrapped it in a photograph of a rose garden. Took them 4 months to realize the roses were printed over a 6-foot image of the van itself. I would have followed you into battle. You still might. What's the mounting height? 8 feet, 2 inches. Setback? 27 feet from the pavement. Power supply? Standard domestic circuit, but I can run a dedicated feed. Local ordinance? Checking tomorrow." Sal inhaled slowly. "I have a decommissioned Fresnel Harbor beacon in storage." "How large?" "The optic is 36 inches tall. Brass frame, rotating carriage. Built in 1978 for Cape Mercy Lighthouse. I only need 800 lumens." "Oh, we can regulate output." 800 exactly. What makes it Lighthouse-Grade then?" "The optic. The rotation. The beam concentration. 800 lumens through that lens won't make the whole street brighter." "What will it do?" "It will place those 800 lumens into one magnificent, narrow, slowly rotating beam." "How narrow?" "About 4 degrees. "How far will it be visible?" "Under ideal conditions. Yes. Several miles." I stared across the kitchen at the printed email. "Is that legal?" "Let's find out." Sal had a municipal permitting consultant named Lorraine Pike. Lorraine was 5'2", wore red glasses, and spoke with the calm intensity of a librarian diffusing a bomb. She kept 6 mechanical pencils aligned in her breast pocket and corrected legal citations the way other people corrected crooked picture frames. "We met at my house Friday morning." Lorraine walked the property with a laser measure while Sal inspected the porch roof. She looked like a small, determined owl conducting an audit. "The HOA covenant is vague," she said. "City ordinance controls glare across public roads and light entering neighboring bedroom windows. It does not regulate equipment type." "What about rotating lights?" I asked. "Red, blue, and emergency amber are restricted. White architectural lighting is permitted if the source is shielded, and the measured illumination at neighboring windows stays below 0.5 lux. My current reading is 0.18 at the property edge. A focused beam will create intermittent peaks. We can aim it above the windows," Sal said. Lorraine adjusted her glasses. "Vertical cutoff? 7 degrees. Rotation speed? 1 revolution every 90 seconds. Operating window, 7 until 9 in the evening. Timer locked? Digital astronomical timer with password protection. Maximum output, 800 lumens." Lorraine looked at him. "Exactly." Sal placed one hand over his heart. "Madam, I calibrate navigational equipment. If I say 800, the bulb will produce 800 lumens with the confidence of a tax bill." Lorraine turned to me. "You'll need an electrical permit, a minor structural permit for the mounting bracket, and an architectural acknowledgement from the HOA." My stomach dropped. "They'll never approve it." "I didn't say approval," she replied. "I said acknowledgement." She opened the governing documents to Section 8.4. The board may restrict brightness, operating time, color, and spill. It cannot prohibit replacement fixtures that meet its written directives unless the fixture is specifically banned elsewhere. Is a lighthouse beacon specifically banned? No. Why not? Because most bylaws are not drafted by people who expect residents to own lighthouse beacons. Sal wiped a tear from his eye. Lorraine continued. "You submit a notice showing compliance with their exact requirements. You include the specification sheet, permits, timer schedule, photometric plan, and the president's clarification email. If they fail to object under a valid written standard within 10 business days, the acknowledgement becomes effective. What if they invent a rule? They can amend the rules prospectively, but not retroactively once your submission is complete. And any amendment needs a board vote, notice to residents, and a 30-day comment period. Sal leaned against the porch column, which creaked like furniture reconsidering its career. So what you're saying, he said, is that the lady built a runway, painted arrows on it, and is now surprised we brought an aeroplane. Lorraine gave him a measured look. I would phrase it differently in the permit application. But legally, yes. I submitted the packet at 11:17 Friday morning. It ran to 43 pages. The cover sheet read, Replacement porch illumination fixture, maximum output, 800 lumens automatic timer, 7 o'clock p.m., 9 o'clock p.m. Color, warm white installation status. Pending statutory acknowledgement. I attached Patricia's email. At noon, she issued the first £75 fine anyway. At 12:06, I appealed. At 12:14, she denied the appeal. At 12:16, I asked when the board had met to consider it. At 12:31, she replied that formal meetings are not required for routine enforcement matters. At 12:42, Lorraine emailed the association's lawyer, asking whether Patricia had exercised board authority without a quorum. At 12:53, the lawyer replied to everyone, Please suspend enforcement pending review. Patricia did not suspend enforcement. By Monday, I owed £300. By Wednesday, £450. On Thursday, she taped a red violation pending placard to my front door. The placard used an adhesive strong enough to survive atmospheric re-entry. I spent 40 minutes removing it with cooking oil while Patricia watched from her golf cart at the curb. What's the purpose of the placard? I asked. Community awareness. Everyone can already see the porch light. It identifies the property as non-compliant. Is public shaming in the bylaws? It is an administrative notice. It has an exclamation mark. The printer adds those. The weary police officer entered the story the following afternoon. His name was Officer Martin Bell. He had silver hair, a mustache like a tired caterpillar, and the expression of a man who had responded to too many emergencies involving decorative fences. Patricia had called the police because my permit consultant was conducting suspicious measurements. Officer Bell found Lorraine standing on the pavement with a tripod-mounted light meter. What are you measuring? He asked. Lux levels at the public right-of-way, Lorraine replied. Why? An HOA lighting dispute. Officer Bell closed his eyes for one full second. Patricia hurried over, clutching her clipboard and wearing a navy polo shirt with the HOA logo embroidered over her heart, like a military decoration she had awarded herself. Officer, this individual has repeatedly entered restricted community areas. Lorraine pointed down. This is a public pavement. The HOA maintains the landscaping. Officer Bell looked at the grass strip. It contained 3 dandelions and a crisp packet. Maintains, he repeated. We have jurisdiction over community aesthetics. Do you own the pavement? We exercise stewardship. That means no. Patricia's voice rose like a kettle discovering ambition. This is part of an ongoing campaign of harassment orchestrated by Mr. Mercer because he refuses to comply with lawful association directives. Officer Bell looked at me. What did you do? I left my porch light on. How bright? 800 lumens. He looked at the fixture. That one? Yes. He looked back at Patricia. That's a normal porch light. It shines directly into my home. Officer Bell turned toward Patricia's house. Her home sat 112 feet away, across a street, behind 2 mature maple trees and a hedge dense enough to conceal a brass band. Which window? The upstairs guest room. Is that your bedroom? No. Does anyone sleep there? That is irrelevant. Officer Bell sighed with the deep spiritual exhaustion of a man watching civilization trip over a garden ornament. He turned to Lorraine. Are you finished measuring? 2 minutes. Finish measuring. Patricia opened her mouth. Officer Bell raised one hand. Ma'am, you called the police because a woman with a ruler was standing on public pavement. It's a light meter. That makes it worse. He returned to his patrol car and ended the scene with the flat accuracy of a coroner reading the weather. No crime has occurred, but several adults have made choices. 10 business days passed. The HOA did not issue a valid objection. They sent comments. Patricia's first comment read, "Fixture appears excessive." Lorraine replied, "Please cite the applicable size restriction." Patricia's second comment read, "Lighthouse equipment is inappropriate in a residential environment." Lorraine replied, "Please cite the provision restricting equipment origin or historic use." Patricia's third comment read, "The board did not anticipate this interpretation." Lorraine printed that one and framed it. On the 11th business day, the acknowledgement became effective. At 7:05 the next morning, 2 Moretti Marine trucks arrived. The first carried scaffolding, electrical equipment, and a brass mounting frame. The second carried the beacon under a canvas cover secured with 6 straps. The trucks reversed into my driveway with beepers chirping through the neighborhood like anxious robotic chickens. Neighbors emerged from their houses. Mr. and Mrs. Pike stood on their lawn in matching dressing gowns. 12-year-old Ethan Crowley rolled up on a bicycle. Mrs. Agnes Chen brought a folding chair and a travel mug, because she recognized premium entertainment when it blocked her morning walk. Sal jumped down from the cab. He wore steel-toed boots, orange braces, and a hard hat decorated with a sticker reading, "Illuminating Poor Decisions Since 1998. "What's under the cover?" Ethan asked. Sal grinned. "Accountability. I would have followed that man anywhere." At 7:19, Patricia's golf cart shot around the corner. The amber beacon flashed. The tires squealed. The clipboard bounced on the passenger seat like a nervous witness. She stopped directly behind the Moretti truck, climbed out, and marched toward us in a white linen suit that made her look like a cruise director arriving to cancel the ocean. "What is happening?" Sal looked at me. I looked at Sal. Sal removed his hard hat. "Ma'am," he said, "we are replacing a porch light." Patricia stared at the canvas-covered object. "With what?" "A porch light." "That is not a porch light. It's not currently anything. It's under a cover. Remove the cover." Sal looked at me again. "Customer request?" "I didn't request it." Patricia stabbed one finger toward the object. "As HOA president, I am ordering you to remove that cover." Sal pulled the canvas free with a theatrical flourish. Morning sunlight struck polished brass. The beacon stood 4 feet tall on its transport cradle, surrounded by concentric glass prisms that caught the light and fractured it into small rainbows across the driveway. Its cylindrical lens looked like a crystal wedding cake designed by naval engineers. The base contained a restored rotating carriage, silent bearings, a geared motor, and a brass manufacturer's plate stamped, "Bellwether Optical Works Marine Beacon Assembly, Model H36. A collective sound moved through the neighbors. It was not quite a gasp. It was the noise ordinary people make when someone else's disagreement becomes historically interesting. Patricia's mouth opened. No sound came out. For the first time since I had known her, the neighborhood was peaceful. Then her voice returned all at once. "That is industrial maritime equipment. Originally," Sal said, "you cannot install a lighthouse on a house. It's only the beacon. That distinction is absurd. Structurally, it's important." Patricia turned to me with a facial expression like a printer displaying an error code no technician had seen before. "Daniel, stop this immediately." "Why?" "Because it violates the lighting order. It emits 800 lumens. That thing could signal ships. Only very small ones at this brightness." Sal coughed into his hand. Patricia pointed toward the lens. "You were instructed to use a timer. It has one. A residential timer. Your email said automatic timing device. I meant a normal porch timer. This is a normal timer. It's sold in several countries. You know exactly what I meant. I know exactly what you wrote." That landed. Patricia's gaze shifted to the folder tucked beneath my arm, then to the neighbors, then to the beacon. Her confidence began leaking away, like air from an inflatable hot tub. She lifted her clipboard. "I am issuing an immediate stop work directive under Section 8.4, Paragraph C." Lorraine stepped out from behind the truck. She wore her red glasses and held a binder with colored tabs arranged like the feathers of a highly organized tropical bird. Section 8.4 does not grant stop work authority. It grants broad enforcement discretion, not over-permitted construction. This installation was never approved. It was acknowledged after the review period elapsed. The board objected. You expressed feelings. You did not identify a valid restriction. Patricia's voice became thin and sharp, like a balloon being squeezed by an accountant. I am the president of this association. Lorraine nodded. That is correctly stated in the records. You cannot speak to me this way. I'm reading your governing documents. I helped write those documents. That explains several punctuation issues. Mrs. Chen made a choking noise into her travel mug. Patricia whipped around. This is not entertainment. Mrs. Chen looked at the folding chair beneath her. I may have misunderstood the seating arrangement. Sal's crew began assembling the support frame. Everything was permitted, documented, bonded, measured, and insured. The bracket attached to a reinforced post beside the porch, rather than the house itself. The beam would rotate above neighboring windows and below the tree canopy. A black metal shield prevented light from striking the street at driver height. The timer was sealed in a weatherproof enclosure and programmed for 2 hours each evening. The beacon itself was not brighter than my original bulb. That was the beauty of it. Brightness and drama are distant cousins who only meet at weddings. The original bulb spread 800 lumens in every direction, most of them wasted against brick, ceiling, insects, and the upper half of my front door. The beacon placed the same output into a narrow rotating beam. Every 90 seconds, a warm white column of light would sweep slowly across the treetops, circle my property, glide over the roofs, and vanish into the fictional hills east of Briar Glen. It would not brighten Patricia's bedroom. It would, however, announce my compliance to anyone within approximately 4 miles. By noon, the beacon was installed. Patricia spent the entire morning making phone calls. She called the city building office, which confirmed my permit. She called the electrical inspector, who was already standing beside her. She called the fire department, which explained that white rotating lights were not reserved for emergency vehicles. She called the association lawyer, who declined to speak on speakerphone. She called someone named Dennis and told him to prepare an emergency resolution. At 12:14, the electrical inspector signed the final certificate. He was a narrow man named Calvin Rhodes who had eyebrows like 2 exhausted commas. Output? He asked. Sal handed him the calibration report. 800 lumens at full operating power. Timer? 7 to 9. Beam elevation? 9 degrees above horizontal. Spill at nearest residence. Lorraine showed him the photometric plan. Calvin inspected the wiring, tested the cutoff switch, and placed a green approval sticker on the control box. Patricia stepped forward. You cannot approve this. Calvin looked at the sticker, then at her. I just did. The HOA objects. Is the HOA the electrical authority? We are the architectural authority. Then object architecturally. It is ugly. Calvin studied the beacon. I kind of like it. Patricia recoiled as though he had praised a contagious disease. At 6:45 that evening, half the neighborhood gathered outside. People brought garden chairs. Someone brought popcorn. Mr. Pike brought binoculars, despite living 30 yards away. Ethan Crowley had constructed a cardboard sailor's hat and was charging other children 50 pence to join what he called the Briar Glen Coast Guard. I sat in my rocking chair with a fresh mug of coffee. It was hot. For once, history had aligned. At 6:52, Patricia arrived in the golf cart. She had replaced the amber beacon on top with a magnetic sign reading, Emergency Board Action. She parked across the end of my driveway and stepped out. The clipboard was now accompanied by a portable loudspeaker. Attention, residents, she announced. The loudspeaker transformed her voice from a fork in a garbage disposal into several forks in an industrial blender. This installation is unauthorized and will not be activated. The neighbors murmured. I checked the time. Patricia, please move your golf cart. You're blocking the driveway. This driveway is subject to emergency association control. No, it isn't. Under Section 2.1, Paragraph H, the board may take reasonable actions to prevent imminent harm. What harm? Disruption of the peaceful residential atmosphere. Ethan raised his cardboard sailor's hat. Will there be foghorns? No foghorns, I said. Yet, Sal muttered. Patricia heard him. You see? She cried. This is an organized campaign of intimidation. Sal folded his arms. He looked like a forklift that had learned patience solely for legal reasons. Ma'am, I installed a lamp. You installed maritime infrastructure. I've installed bigger lights over sandwich shops. At 6:57, Patricia approached the control box. I stood. Do not touch that equipment. As association president, I have authority to disable unapproved modifications. It's approved by the city, not by this board. It was acknowledged under your own review procedure. That acknowledgement is revoked, not unilaterally. She reached for the latch. Lorraine raised her phone and began recording. Patricia, she said, the control system is private property. You have been told not to touch it. Patricia turned toward the crowd. You are all witnessing insubordination, Mrs. Chen called back. We're mostly witnessing you touching his box. A ripple of laughter moved across the pavement. Patricia's cheeks flushed, a shade normally associated with emergency exit signs. At 6:59, a police cruiser rolled around the corner. Officer Martin Bell stepped out. He took in the crowd, the chairs, the lighthouse beacon, the golf cart, the cardboard sailors, and Patricia gripping a loudspeaker beside a locked electrical enclosure. His shoulders sank like a man whose soul had just received overtime paperwork. Patricia rushed toward him. Officer Bell, thank goodness. This man is preparing to activate an unlawful industrial signal device in a residential neighborhood. Officer Bell looked at me. Is it unlawful? No. Permitted? I handed him the inspection certificate. He read it. Timer, 7 until 9. Brightness, 800 lumens. He looked at the beacon, then at my old porch fixture lying in a box. Same as the old bulb? Exactly. Officer Bell looked at Patricia. You complained the old one was too bright. Yes. So you required him to replace it? Yes. With something no brighter. Yes, but... and on a timer. That is not what I... Lorraine held up the printed email. It is precisely what she wrote. Officer Bell read it. The timer clicked. A soft motor engaged beneath the beacon. The glass lens began to turn. Patricia spun around. No. The lamp came alive. Warm white light filled the Fresnel lens. Not with the harsh blast of a stadium floodlight, but with a deep, concentrated glow. The prisms gathered it, shaped it, and projected it outward in one narrow beam. The beam swept slowly across my maple tree. Leaves flashed gold. It crossed the roofline, passed above the street, illuminated the top of Patricia's hedge, and continued toward the eastern hills like the finger of a very polite deity, pointing out a zoning violation. The neighbors cheered. Ethan saluted. Mr. Pike looked through his binoculars and whispered, "Magnificent." Patricia stood frozen. The beam completed its circle. 90 seconds later, it returned. This time, it passed directly over her golf cart, lighting the amber dome on top and casting her enormous shadow across the pavement. She looked like a furious monument dedicated to administrative overreach. "Turn it off!" she screamed. "It's on a timer," I said. "You control the timer. It's password protected. Then enter the password. It is operating during the hours you specified. This is harassment. How? It points at my house. It passes above your roof for less than 1 second every 90 seconds. That is still repeated targeting." Calvin Rhodes, the electrical inspector, had remained to see the activation. He lifted the meter at Patricia's property line. Peak reading, 0.21 lux. "What does that mean?" Officer Bell asked. "Less than the ordinance allows." Patricia grabbed the loudspeaker. "Residents, return to your homes. This gathering is not sanctioned." Nobody moved. She raised the volume. "This is a direct instruction from the board president." The loudspeaker produced a burst of feedback sharp enough to exfoliate brick. Patricia, startled, stepped backward and bumped into the golf cart. Her elbow struck the steering wheel. The golf cart's horn began blaring. She twisted around to silence it, dropped the loudspeaker, caught its strap around the clipboard, and somehow activated the amber beacon at the same time. For 10 extraordinary seconds, Patricia stood tangled between a shrieking loudspeaker, a honking golf cart, a spinning warning light, and a lighthouse beam that swept over the entire arrangement with the timing of a theatrical spotlight. The children applauded. Officer Bell pinched the bridge of his nose. Patricia yanked the loudspeaker free and climbed onto the golf cart seat to reach the magnetic emergency board action sign, which had begun slipping sideways. Her linen trouser leg caught on the parking brake. She did not fall. She descended in stages, like a folding garden chair losing faith. First onto the seat, then onto the floorboard, then sideways into a decorative boxwood shrub beside my driveway. The shrub was soft, recently watered, and entirely on common landscaping. Patricia emerged with leaves in her hair and the clipboard pressed flat against her chest. No one had touched her. No one had threatened her. She had been defeated by her own golf cart, her own sign, her own loudspeaker, and the urgency of her own performance. Officer Bell helped her stand. "Are you injured? My dignity has been deliberately attacked." "That's not a medical condition." Patricia pointed at me with a shaking finger. "Arrest him." "For what?" "Harassment, public endangerment, malicious use of a lighthouse." Officer Bell looked at the permitted beacon, then at the timer, then at the email she had written. "Ma'am, he complied with your demand so precisely that it became visible from another postcode." The neighbors broke into laughter. That should have been the end. It was not. Patricia still had one final mistake left. She climbed onto the golf cart's running board, raised the clipboard, and announced, "I don't care what the permits say. I don't care what the bylaws say. I wrote the clarification, and I can interpret it any way I choose. This board is whatever I say it is." Silence fell. Lorraine's phone was still recording. So were at least 9 others. Even Ethan had a tablet pointed at her, though his footage was mostly vertical and included 3 accidental close-ups of his own forehead. The association lawyer, Charles Denton, stood at the edge of the crowd. I had not noticed him arrive. Charles was a gray, narrow man in a navy suit, with the complexion of someone who had spent 30 years indoors, warning people not to say exactly what Patricia had just said. He stepped forward. "Patricia." She turned. Her face changed. Dawning horror moved across it like a cloud passing over a picnic. "Charles, I was explaining the board's discretionary authority." "No," he said. "You were disclaiming the governing documents in front of witnesses. I was speaking rhetorically. You also continued issuing fines after I instructed the board to suspend enforcement. As president, I believed immediate action was necessary. You denied an appeal without a board meeting. It was routine. You ordered contractors off private property without authority. They were creating a nuisance. You attempted to open a live electrical control cabinet. I was preventing activation, and you stated, on video, that the board is whatever you say it is." Patricia looked around. Every phone remained raised. The beacon swept across the trees once more, softly illuminating Charles's suit and Patricia's leaf-covered hair. Charles exhaled. It sounded like a man mentally increasing his hourly rate. "Do not issue another notice," he said. "Do not contact Mr. Mercer. Do not operate the association golf cart. I am calling an emergency board meeting. You cannot remove me." "I cannot." Patricia's chin rose slightly. Charles continued. "But the board can." The emergency meeting took place 2 nights later in the Briar Glen Community Room, which was really a converted sales office, containing 42 plastic chairs and a coffee machine that dispensed brown regret. 116 residents attended. The room legally held 80. People stood in the corridor and listened through an open window. Patricia sat at the front behind a folding table, flanked by the remaining 4 board members. She wore a navy blazer and had removed every visible leaf from her hair, though one small twig remained caught behind her left ear like a woodland subpoena. Her clipboard lay before her. For once, she did not touch it. Charles Denton presented the facts. The lighting restriction had never included a measurable brightness standard. Patricia had acted without a quorum. She had denied my appeal without a hearing. She had continued fines after legal counsel advised suspension. She had publicly marked my home as non-compliant without authority. She had attempted to interfere with permitted electrical equipment, and her written clarification had explicitly authorized a replacement fixture of no more than 800 lumens controlled by a timer. The beacon met every requirement. The association's insurance carrier had seen the video. That sentence changed the room, because Patricia's statement that the board was, whatever I say it is, suggested intentional conduct outside her authorized duties. The insurer had placed the association's directors and officers coverage under immediate review. If coverage were withdrawn, each board member could become personally exposed to claims resulting from Patricia's actions. The 4 directors beside her began looking at Patricia, like passengers discovering the captain had been steering with a baguette. Board Treasurer Malcolm Avery spoke first. I move to rescind all fines against Mr. Mercer. The motion passed 4-1. I move to reimburse his permit and consultation costs. That passed 4-1. The total was £2,418.60. Patricia objected that the amount was punitive. Lorraine raised a receipt. It is arithmetic. The room applauded. Then Board Secretary Joan Bellamy moved to remove Patricia as president. Patricia finally reached for the clipboard. Her hand rested on it, the way a retired knight might touch a sword that no longer belonged to him. "You are making a terrible mistake," she said. "Without strong leadership, this community will descend into disorder." From the back of the room, Mrs. Chen called, "We might leave a bin out until morning." The vote was 4-1. Patricia Wexler was removed as president at 8:47 p.m. The applause lasted 32 seconds. She remained on the board for another 7 minutes. Then someone asked whether directors could be individually liable if the insurer denied coverage. Patricia resigned at 8:54. Her resignation was handwritten on the back of a violation form. The clipboard had finally turned against her. The insurance company did not cancel coverage, but it required the association to adopt new enforcement procedures, independent legal review, recorded votes, published standards, and an appeal process administered by someone who did not arrive in a golf cart with a flashing light. Every fine Patricia had issued during the previous 18 months was reviewed. 63 were withdrawn. 9 residents received reimbursements. Mr. Pike recovered £225 for having a hose reel visible from the street. Agnes Chen received £150 after Patricia had cited her for hanging seasonally confusing decorations in March. The decoration was a wooden duck wearing a scarf. The new HOA president was Malcolm Avery, a retired postman with knees that clicked like castanets and no interest in measuring anyone's lawn. His inaugural speech lasted 11 words. "Keep things safe, keep things tidy, and please act like adults." That was the whole thing. The neighborhood changed almost immediately. People began sitting outside again. Children rode bicycles without being photographed for unsafe recreational velocity. Mrs. Chen's wooden duck received a summer hat. The decorative pond remained available to everyone, including the plastic frog. Patricia removed the Compliance Patrol lettering from the golf cart. She sold it to Sal for £900. He wrapped it in reflective stripes and now uses it to move equipment around his warehouse. The amber beacon remains on top, but he changed the side lettering to Moretti Mobile Illumination Authority. Patricia listed her house 3 months later. She moved to a high-rise flat in central Port Bellwether, where there was no lawn to inspect, no porch lights to regulate, and a building manager named Ruth, who reportedly enforced the rubbish chute schedule with the calm discipline of a prison warden. My beacon still operates every evening, from 7 until 9. At exactly 7, the motor engages. The lens begins its slow rotation. A warm beam travels across the trees, over the rooftops, and toward the hills. It does not disturb anyone. It does not enter any bedrooms. It uses no more power than my original porch bulb. Sometimes neighbors time their evening walks so they pass as it turns on. Ethan still salutes from his bicycle, though he retired from the Briar Glen Coast Guard after collecting £14.50 in membership fees and spending all of it on sweets. I sit in the rocking chair my father helped me repair, beneath the fixture he installed. The old brass porch light is still there. I never removed it. It just no longer contains a bulb. Gerald the moth remains inside, now enjoying retirement in what I assume is complete darkness. And my coffee still goes cold most evenings because I'm too busy watching 800 perfectly legal lumens sweep across a neighborhood that finally learned the difference between being bright and being brilliant. So tell me in the comments, what is the most ridiculous complaint an HOA or neighbor has ever made about your home? Like the video, subscribe, and join us again for more sovereign judgment. Patricia wanted the light toned down. I simply gave it direction.